Ahoy comic art peeps, Stingray here. Welcome you back to the Cove, where today I have something a little bit different for you. You see, I decided it's time for me to frame up some more of my art. And I realized that wherever comic art collectors congregate, there are certain questions that come up about framing. Should you frame your art? Should you put it up on the wall to display? Is it better to keep it all tucked away in a portfolio, perhaps in a go bag in case of emergency and you have to get out of Dodge with your most prized possessions as quickly as possible? That is a very real possibility that happened to some people that I know just this year. There are other people who they both want to keep their art protected, but they also want to share it with the world, and they choose kind of a compromise situation where the originals remain tucked away in a safe place, but they frame and hang on their walls high-res reproductions. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad idea, but for me, my preference is to display the originals because then you can see all the line work, the textures, the things like brush strokes and things like that. And I don't know, that to me is kind of part of the whole point of collecting original art. And if I'm going to show off my art, I kind of want to see all of it. And I want the people who might come over and see the art hanging on the walls to see all of those things. Now, another thing is if you're going to frame your art, if you're framing reproductions, you can go buy a $20 frame from Michael's and it's no big deal, right? But if you're going to frame the actual originals, you may want to put some money into the frame, put some money into the materials that you use to encapsulate your art in order to protect it and preserve it for a long time to come. So on my part, I buy custom frames, I do custom matting, and I opt to go for museum quality acrylic as the piece that you look at the art through, which is in most cases the most expensive part of buying the framing material. But the reason that I made that decision is because I thought about it for quite a bit when I first decided that I wanted to start framing my art. And I realized that my collection, specifically the Stingray art, it means a lot to me, and I intend to keep it for a long time to come. I want to maintain my collection for probably the rest of my life. And I hope that my collection remains intact even beyond my lifespan. So I've decided that I'm going to put in the money and the time investment to preserve and protect my art the best that I can now so that I can continue to enjoy it for the rest of my life, and hopefully others can enjoy it even beyond that. So I opt to buy nice custom frames with archival quality materials like the acid-free matting and the museum level acrylic and all of that stuff to better preserve my art. That's where I stand on it. So now that I've explained my stance on that, I like to display my art and I like to protect it and preserve it. So now that we know that, I thought it would be fun to show you the process that I go through, all of the steps and all of the materials included, and basically explain to you guys the overall process of all right, so the first step in framing is ordering a frame, getting a framing kit. Now, I order my frames online from a website called framedestination.com. This video is not sponsored by them, but if anybody from Frame Destination is watching and likes this video, maybe we could talk. Now, when I order from Frame Destination, I get a full framing kit. So what does that include? Well, the first part is the frame, right? This is just a nice classic wooden frame. For my Stingray art, I choose to go with just a simple, nice thin, low profile wooden frame in black. I like to keep it simple, nothing fancy. A lot of the Stingray art is black and white. Some of it is in color, but I feel like black is kind of timeless. It's classic and it goes with everything. The next thing is the glazing. And it's a fancy term. Glazing is a catch-all term that can refer to glass or acrylic, the clear layer that you put in the frame that covers the art and protects it, right? So this is my glazing for this frame. This is a piece of museum quality acrylic, and it has a little sticker here that talks about all the features. So this is Optium Museum acrylic. It's abrasion resistant, anti-reflective, 99% UV protection, and it's anti-static. So as I mentioned in the first section of this video, I like to do the museum quality acrylic. This is by far the most expensive part of this overall package that I've purchased. This is going to be, this one item cost me more than everything else put together, okay? But I like all of the features that I just read off of that sticker there, and 99% UV. I keep my art, a lot of it is in my living room in my apartment, and a little bit of sunlight comes in, but not a lot, and it's not direct sunlight, so probably be okay. But I feel better knowing that this is on top of my art, protecting it from even that little bit of light that comes in as much as possible. I think that with the museum quality acrylic, it's also anti-reflective, so it looks really well. The art really comes through. You get the true colors that come through. It doesn't really distort the color of the art if it's a color piece. And it's just better for viewing, and I find that it works a lot better for photographing as well. So if I want to photograph my art that's up on the walls to share it online, you know, with people, I think it looks much better. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I can't see through that, and it's got writing on it, what gives? It ships with this like cling film on it that is there to protect it. So if I take that off, you can see the clear corner there. But I typically leave the cling film on there until I'm ready to actually install that in the frame. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. Now, the next piece is matting. Now, I'll be upfront with you guys. I actually bought a mat cutter because when I decided to start getting into framing, I thought it would be cool to do as much of the process myself as I could. And so I bought a mat cutter and I started cutting mats, and I have a few pieces up on my wall with mats that I cut myself. And to be quite frank, I think they look really good. They look professionally done. I don't think anybody would be able to look at them and tell the difference between what I did and a professional job. So, you know, yay me. But I started having issues where my mats weren't coming out entirely straight, and I was trying to cut larger mats for larger pieces of art, and I think that might be part of the problem. I might have been losing some of the, I don't know, the consistency there. I'm not really sure what happened. Maybe my mat cutter needs to be recalibrated, which it's not like a digital thing or anything like that. I didn't spring for that kind of thing. So what I mean is I might just need to straighten out some pieces on it. I'm not really sure, but I haven't cut my own mats for a while now. So I did purchase mats to go with this frame. So these came with it. Now I have two here. I have my top frame and my bottom frame. And basically they cut these to the same size, right? So that they just fit in the frame. So I can take the glass, the acrylic out, drop these guys in here, and then you get an idea of what it's going to look like. And for me, I choose, even with the black and white art, Stingray art, I like to have the white and red matting. And that's one of the things I like about matting is it gives you the ability to kind of express yourself a little bit as an art collector. You can try to come up with a nice color scheme that looks good and complements the art that you're framing. Now, some people, Ruben, don't like using color matting with black and white art, but I made the decision that I want all of my Stingray art to have a uniform look. So each and every piece of Stingray art I frame gets the white with the red inner matting, okay? And that's just how I like to do it. Red and white are obviously the colors of Stingray. So these are the colors that I choose to use. Now this matting is a brand of mat called Crescent, and this is the Crescent Select, which I believe is archival quality, which means that it's acid free. It's 4-ply, which just refers to the thickness. This isn't terribly thick. And the cool thing about mats is that you can get them in 8-ply, which is twice as thick as that. You can get the rag mat, which is made from cotton as opposed to normal, pulp and fibers, which is completely acid-free. There are other mats in a broader variety of colors. I think with the more like the rag mat, there's only like 8 colors to choose from, whereas with the Crescent Select, there's like 60 colors or something like that. And then there's other more colorful varieties of matting, but those are not quite as archival friendly. So, you know, it's one of those things where you have to look at the options and choose what is best for you, what works for you. I go with the basic archival quality that does have some color options so that I can choose to do different colors. I framed a piece just recently that I had a red and purple mats on it because those were the primary colors in the piece. And I think it came out really nice. So again, just look at the options and figure out what works for you and use it as a way to express yourself. And the cool thing is you can do a single mat, double mat, you can do triple, quadruple, quintuple mats if you want, as long as there's room, you know, inside the frame, you know, like if the depth of the frame. I don't know how well you can see it in there, but you know, there's still a lot of room in there, but I don't have the art in there. I don't have the acrylic in there, and I don't have the backing board yet. But you know, if you wanted to do 5 mats, you could do that as long as the frame is thick enough to hold all that. Go wild and have fun with it. Okay, and the next piece that comes with the frame kit is just a piece of foam core board, 3/16 inch foam board. Nothing special. It's you know, just foam board, and basically everything else is in the frame. If this was my piece of art, I put that in there, right, and then I would just lay that on top of it, and you would have this white piece of foam on the back to protect the art from the rear. That's really all it's there for. And I think foam board it's not paper, so I don't think it has any acid in it. So it's a little bit safer than putting, like, say, just a piece of cardboard. So that's pretty simple. We'll get into it more when we're actually putting everything together, but there is another step that you could do right here. When you buy the frames online, typically you can opt to have them put points in. You ever bought a frame from the store, and when you go to take the back off, there's those little metal tabs that you have to fold up, and then you take the stuff out, you put it back in, and you fold those little metal tabs down. Well, those are called points. And I opted to get my frame without points in it because, like I said before, I liked the idea of doing as many steps of this process myself as possible. So I went a little bit crazy, and when I started researching framing and how to do it and all that, I ended up buying a point driver, which it's kind of like, it works on the same principle as like a nail gun almost. We'll look at that when we actually talk about the tools that I use, and we'll see it in action when we actually put everything together. You can order the frame with points already in it, but to me, especially since I have a point driver, like that means I gotta, when I get the frame, they ship everything inside it. So I would have to fold up the points, take everything out, put everything back in when I'm ready to put it all together, fold them back down, and then, you know, go from there. And that just, I don't know. I have a point driver, so I'm like, why would I need to do that and give myself extra work, but then I have to drive in the points, and maybe that's extra work. I don't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and now I have the thing, so I feel like I have to use it. Maybe that's just sunk cost fallacy. I don't know, but it is what it is. But anyway, the final piece that comes in a frame kit when you order all this stuff, with at least on framedestination.com, if you order a full frame kit, all the stuff that we just talked about, they send you a hanging kit for free. And basically all it is a couple of D-rings and a couple of screws that you attach to the outer sides of the frame, and then some picture hanging wire, which you then, you know, tie between the 2 D-rings, and then that's what you use to hang the frame on the wall. On a screw or a hook or whatever. It's kind of a nice part of the package to have. There are other options that you can get on the online or at your local hardware store or whatever. You could, even if you don't want to screw into the frame and you know, drill holes into it and that kind of thing, you can get, like, I think they're the, was it the 3M command strips, which just basically put sticky little squares on the back of the frame, and then you affix it to the wall and that kind of thing. I kind of like the picture hanging hardware that comes with the kit. It's simple and straightforward. So next we'll look at some all right, let's talk about the tools and materials used in putting everything together. Now, I want to preface this by saying a lot of the stuff here you don't actually need, even if you're putting together your own frames. I may have gone a little crazy and decided to buy additional stuff because I thought I was going to be doing a lot more framing and doing a lot of the steps myself. So I bought additional tools that maybe are a bit much for a beginner, a novice, and a neophyte. But when I dive into things like this, I kind of go all the way in or not at all. And so I end up spending a lot of extra money on things that maybe I didn't really need, but I felt like I needed at the time. So as we go through this, I just want you guys to keep in mind, you don't always necessarily need exactly the tools that I have, but in this video is about how I frame art, not how you might frame art. So keep that in mind. Now, let's dive in. So the first thing I want to point out is gloves. When you're putting stuff together, you're handling art, you're handling a frame that can pick up fingerprints very easily. You don't want to get nasty, greasy, oily fingerprints on your art. You don't want to get it on your frame. You definitely don't want to get it on your glass or acrylic. That stuff can be a pain to clean, especially with the acrylic. It's abrasive, so you don't want to just like quickly grab like a paper towel and wipe it down. That might scrape it up. So you got to be really careful with that stuff. And a little extra protection. It's like they say, no glove, no love, right? The next thing is self-adhesive linen hinging tape. This is linen tape. It is archival quality. And this is what we use. You actually have to adhere your art to the back of the mat so that it stays in place and doesn't move around when it's in there in the frame. And with this stuff, this is archival quality. This will last for a long time, and it's very safe and easy to apply to a piece of art. It comes right back off really easily. It's easy to get. You can get it at a craft store. You can get it on Amazon, and it's just a nice, simple, safe product to use when you're framing your art. Now, this next thing is a perfect example of I might have gone a little overboard. Now, another thing that I do is I put a dust cover on the back of my frames. When everything is said and done and everything is inside the frame and the points are driven in to hold it all in, you could just leave that wide open, but then that's gonna get dusty. It's gonna get dirt and crud in it. And I like to put a dust cover on the back. And the easiest way to do that I found is just to use a double-sided tape. Put a layer around each edge of the frame, and then this is what I use. It's just craft paper. You use that to do the dust cover, you're good to go. Now, I thought I would be doing a lot more matte cutting and a lot more framing. And so I thought, you know, regular, just a roll of double-sided tape seemed like it would be fine, but it would slow me down. So I bought a double-sided tape gun. This is pretty cool. And you've got that roll of tape in there. And basically all you do is you pull the trigger and then you just go across whatever surface, and all you get is a clear layer of stickiness. So this just kind of, you know, you hold the trigger and it makes it faster. You can do the four sides of a frame really quick. You can do the four sides of a piece of matting and stick the two pieces together very, very quickly with this. Again, totally optional, not necessarily. You could just buy a regular roll and do it by hand of double-sided tape. But that's just another example of me going overboard. And speaking of going overboard, this is the point driver that I talked about. This is from the Logan company. They're the same people that made the mat cutter that I bought, which is how I found out about this. So I thought this was pretty cool. So this is a spring-loaded little dealie that has the points in them. It's hard to see, but they're these little metal points. This is a stack of like 20 or 30, I believe. And they just go right in here in the little track. So we'll just go ahead and close this up. And then basically what you do is you line this up with the inside of the frame on top of the foam board. You pull the trigger and it goes ka-thunk, and it drives that point right into the edge. And you do a row of this. And the cool thing is you can do as many as you want, right? So you can put like 3 or 4 points per side. You can put 6 if it's a bigger piece, you know, however many you want, however many makes you feel like your art and other items are safe and secure within the frame. But again, most places, if you order a frame from the internet, they're gonna put points in there for you unless you tell them not to. So you don't really need this, but it's kind of fun to use. So I don't mind that I spent the money on it. Now, after you've got all the art and everything in the frame and you've got the points driven in, like I said, you can put a dust cover on there. This is just a roll of craft paper. You know, you basically roll this out, put your frame on it with the double-sided tape, stick it on there and cut it to size. Bada bing, bada boom, you're done, right? It's pretty simple and straightforward, and it keeps dust out. This is a small piece or a small roll rather, that I decided to use for display purposes. This is good for small art. This is probably the one I'll be using for the frame today. This is a perfect size for that. I have a couple more rolls of this stuff of varying sizes that are used for bigger frames too. So just, it's easier if you have paper that is you can lay the frame on top of. And then the last few tools is a group of like basic tools, hand tools that I use throughout the process. A basic screwdriver, pair of scissors, a hammer. Now the hammer kind of is only there to go with this. This is an awl, which is just a very pointy tool. This is an old-fashioned woodworking tool that I use with the hammer to drive points into the frame so that I can screw in the screws for the D-rings that are part of the picture hanging equipment. Is an awl really required? Probably not. If you have a power drill and you just put the screw on it and just drive that right in, you could probably get away with that. But I bought an awl and, dink, put a little, a starting hole in there and then crank the screw in there. And then just for cutting the wire, the picture hanging wire, I have a pair of wire cutters. The scissors are for cutting like the craft paper, just basic tools to make it easier to get the things done. And so that's all of the tools and materials that I use for putting a frame together. So now we can talk about all right, we're ready to get started. So let's glove up and then we can go ahead and get this thing put together. You can tell that I'm not a doctor or a dentist. I don't use these things that regularly and they feel a little bit awkward trying to get them on all the way. All right, good enough. Now that we are gloved up, we have our acrylic and our frame. So that's where we're gonna start. So the first thing that I like to do is get some of the plastic here. I like to pull it off on one side. And gently lay that into the frame. And we have the backside started. And now we can just gently as possible, peel that off. And there's the glazing. Now, we can go ahead and throw the white mat in there. All right, starting to look like a real photo or art now. And we're gonna set that aside for one moment. And we're going to grab the mat and we're gonna grab our piece of art, which is this lovely piece by Jamie Jones. Jamie did this for me last November, December timeframe as part of the Winter Comic Art Live. So first, we're gonna lay that over the mat and we're gonna try to get it nice and evenly lined up. This part's a little bit difficult if you're not looking at the other side. All right, and then we're gonna grab our linen tape. And we're gonna cut off a couple of pieces. I usually use 4. Now this stuff can be tricky to get separated from the back of it. We're gonna try, oh, look at that. That piece came off real easy. So what we're gonna do is very carefully, oops, kind of slid around a little bit. Try to keep it nice and even and put a piece of the tape on the back so that it covers both the art and the mat. And I'm going to smooth that out. Now it's not pretty, but that's okay because this is the back of the art and this is going to be inside the frame and nobody will ever see it but us. And that's okay. All right, so we're going to get this next piece of tape. There we go. All right, same thing here. All right. I removed one glove for this just because getting the tape to separate without the glove is a little bit easier for me because sometimes it helps to have a fingernail ready. Now, we have the 2 pieces that are on there, and now we're going to create a T shape here with the second piece. Just like that, and that is called a T-hinge, and I'll show you why it's a hinge in just a moment. Now, normally if you have a bigger piece of art and you have like a wider border on the mat, you could go farther up, but in this case, I think we're good just like that. Let us get our final piece of tape here, and then we will do the same thing on this side. Get that like that, get that all the way up to the art, and do that. All right, perfect. Now let's call it a hinge shape because now, see that? It it hinges, right? And if we flip that over, looks pretty good, right? You got that right up in the corner, which is about how I wanted it. We're cutting off Jamie's signature ever so slightly, but it's pretty even on both sides, I think. So that's just going to have to be a casualty. So now we just throw that in there. And whoops, well, it's hinging all right, but look at that. Now we're most of the way home now. So now we put in the mat board. Now we can grab my favorite, the driver. And all you do is line that up to the edge. Boom, you got a point. Just kind of spin this around. You probably don't need this many points. I mean, it's up to you, whatever makes you feel like your art is secured in there. I'll go one more right here. Boom. Now that is in there. It's not going to come out, right? So we're good to go. So now the next piece of this is going to be to do the dust cover. Now we can get out the craft paper. So this is where the double-sided tape gun is going to come in. This is the fun part. Go ahead and get the scissors here. So now, pull the trigger, drag that along here. Now, I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera, but this area here, it didn't stick. It didn't quite go, so we're going to go over it again. There we go. All right, we're going to turn it and do the same thing. There we go. That's applying much nicer. Turn it, apply, and then one last side. Beautimous. And now we can take this and flip it, put it right on the paper, and press it down. Now, normally I probably would have run and grabbed another glove, but I forgot. So we're just going to kind of push this down around the edges. Make sure it's nice and smooth. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and cut off this side. And then we're just going to kind of grab this guy and flip it. There we go. Kind of smooth that out on the edges. All right, now there is one tool I forgot to mention in the tools and materials that I use. This is a very specialized tool. If you can see it on there, it is the Logan Dust Cover Trimmer. This is another item from the Logan company that makes the point driver and the mat cutter that I have. And this is made specifically for cutting dust cover. So let me show you how this works. Basically, if you can see it, it's got a little razor blade in there. And all you do is you line this up with the frame and the dust cover. You tilt it 45 degrees so that that razor is on there, and you just drag it along. And then we turn, line that up, tilt, and drag. And all that comes away very easily, and we have a very nice, very pristine, very professional looking dust cover. And now we don't have to worry about dust getting into the back of our frame. Nothing's going to come out because we have all those points in there, and everybody's happy. Now, the last thing that we want to do, we're going to go ahead and put on some hanging hardware. As you can see, we have the picture hanging wire, a couple of D-rings, the screws, and a couple of little feet that you can actually put on the bottom corners so that the frame doesn't lean directly against the wall. Just go ahead and take one of the D-rings. We're going to go ahead and tap a hole in there, just like that. We're going to take the other D-ring, take it straight across, do the exact same thing. There we go. There we go. That is in there nice and firm. Nice and tight. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take off this other glove just because it's easier to work with the wire. So we'll go ahead and put on the little footies. All right, one goes just like that. Just like that. Easy peasy. And now for the wire. Now, I'm not an expert at doing this, but I can usually get it to work. Basically, what you want to do here is get enough wire in to where you can tie it together and create a nice little knot on this side so that it all holds together. All right. And then basically what you do from there is you just kind of like wrap this around, get a nice coil going. And then this just kind of helps keep it from, you know, unwinding, unraveling, and coming undone. We can grab the wire cutters, the little snips, snip this little end off so that it's flush with the part that is wrapped around like that, and you don't have any sharp pointy ends. And now we have that end done. So now we will run the other end through the ring. And what you want to do, you could pull it taut, but I find that the better way to do it is see like how much slack you need. Like if there was a nail or some kind of hook that lines up here at the top of the frame, that's about how much slack you want. So this is where we want it to be. So all this over here is going to be excess, but I'm not going to cut it off quite yet. So now I got to, well, I'm going to cut off some of it. I don't need all of this. About like that maybe. So now I can work with this a little bit better. All right, so now, all right, and then just start wrapping this around just like we did on the other side. All right. This side's a little janky, but it should be okay. This part is always the hardest part for me, but that's it. And now we have a fully framed piece of art. And with the picture hanging wire on the back, we now have a finished frame that is ready to go up on the wall. And it looks pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. Of course, this is not my first rodeo, and it may be yours. So if you have any questions about any of the steps in the process that I took today, any of the materials, the framing pieces or parts, the matting, you know, any of that stuff, feel free to ask me in the comments below. And if there's anything about this video that you thought could be better or that needs work, this was an experiment. I wanted to try something different that relates to comic art collecting, but isn't just another art unboxing, because unfortunately, I don't have art coming in every week, but I do want to keep making videos and engaging with you guys, engaging with the audience, and keeping discussions open about comic art and collecting comic art. So to that end, if you guys have any suggestions for other topics related to comic art collecting that you would like to hear my thoughts on or see me do a video on, please let me know in the comments. I would be happy to explore further ideas and try to find new ways to engage with the rest of the community and continue to talk about this awesome hobby of ours. Well, I think that's it for me today. So you guys have a good one, and I'm going to go find a spot on the wall for this. I'll see you next time.